know that one of the most cost-effective ways to clear farmland is to employ a flock of goats? Spend the next 20 minutes feeding your brain with Formosa Fauna so you can learn all about the animal kingdom and become smarter than all of your friends. Hello, I'm Tristan Hildebrand, the voice of Formosa Fauna. I love animals and I really do love talking about them. World Goat Day is August 21st. Did you know that goats were among the first domesticated animals? In fact, National Geographic says that goats were probably the first animals to be domesticated, followed closely by sheep. Domestication can happen to wild animals as well as wild plants. In the case of plants, people first domesticated them about 10,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. People collected and planted the seeds of wild plants, made sure they had the water they needed, and planted them in areas with sufficient sunlight. The first domesticated crops were wheat, barley, lentils, and types of peas. Rice and potatoes were cultivated early on in other parts of the world. Cotton was also domesticated for fiber used in clothing. Tulips were domesticated for ornamental purposes. Around the same time people domesticated plants in Mesopotamia, they also started taming animals for various reasons, including meat, milk, and hides. It is said that the easiest animals to domesticate are animals that are herbivores because they don't require humans to kill other animals or grow other crops to feed them. Typically, cows are another easily domesticated animal. Chickens, on the other hand, surprisingly, are slightly harder to domesticate because they feed on a diet of seeds and grain that have to be harvested separately, specifically for them. If you're not familiar with the region I just mentioned, Mesopotamia, which is very historical, it is located around present-day Iraq. Did you know that one of the most cost-effective ways to clear farmland is to employ a flock of goats, though? I first heard about this when I was volunteering at a no-kill dog shelter in the U.S. The owners ran that shelter on their farm-like multi-acre property. They had mentioned that for a lot of responsible farmers or landowners, dousing properties with poisonous weed killers just isn't the right move, nor is it one they want to make. Instead, I heard that people would hire flocks of dozens of goats, that they'd load them up into a truck, drive them out to the property, needing attention, and then just let them go and graze. Apparently, because goats have such strong stomachs and appetites, they clear these overgrown areas in a very natural way. However, I've been given wrong word-of-mouth information before, so today I'm fact-checking myself on whether or not what I heard back then was true. Here on a lawn website called Lawn Love, I see 3 words: goats are voracious. They are born vegetarians and are not picky. They eat virtually everything in their path: grass, shrubs, weeds, vines, even small trees. Even poisonous plants, if you let them. A couple of dozen goats can clear a half-acre of brush and weeds in a few days. Goats can't completely eliminate weeds, but they do chew them down to manageable levels, giving you a head start on reclaiming your yard. While the weeds will eventually grow back, the goats make it easier to control them with more traditional methods like mowing or applying herbicides. Sure, you could use gallons of herbicides or rent a bush hog, but each has its drawbacks. Herbicides can harm beneficial plants and insects, and a bush hog can't reach all the tricky spots that goats can. A personal experience: when Jean Kaplan of Indianapolis inherited her mother's home, the yard was overrun with weeds. Wanting to avoid chemical weed killers, Kaplan sought a natural solution. Remembering her mom's fondness for goats, she recalled hearing about their use in parks for weed control. She said, "I didn't want to spray because of the dogs. And I have toads in the yard, which could be harmed by the spray as well. The weeds were too tall and dense for mowing." Kaplan contacted Goats on the Go in Indianapolis. Co-owner Caitlin Hossam visited Kaplan's property to assess the situation and provide a cost estimate. She also checked for plants that might be toxic to the goats, because while they do have what some might say iron stomachs, they are not invincible, and some plants can be toxic to them. In less than 2 days, the 26 goats had chewed the weeds down to nubs. Renting goats for weed control involves more than just placing an order online. You'll likely receive multiple goats as they are social animals. A reputable goat rental company will visit your property beforehand to assess the number of goats needed, plan fencing, check for poisonous plants, protect the desirable plants, and provide a cost estimate. So anybody considering the services, be aware that you won't have full access to areas where the goats are penned, so you may need to plan accordingly. On the agreed upon day, the company will set up the goats in a portable fenced-in area and provide water and food supplements. The goats will stay until the job is complete, which could take a month or more in larger areas. Goats produce quite a bit of manure. In fact, over the course of a couple days that they're on the property, they're going to produce a lot of it. However, that excrement can be used as fertilizer. If renters don't want or won't use it, they can even check with rental companies to see if they'd like to keep it instead. Are you as curious as I am to know how much such services may cost? They cost around $400 to $800 per acre. That's actually cheaper than a lawn care professional who would likely charge $1,000 or more per acre to clear thick brush. We had a somewhat fun pangolin sighting over in northern Taiwan this week. A pangolin was spotted wandering around a street in Geelong, causing concern for its safety. Local police and residents collaborated to rescue the animal after it entered a nearby home and curled up defensively. The pangolin was safely captured, placed in a cat carrier, and handed over to animal protection authorities. Authorities advise against disturbing animals and urge people to report any unusual sightings. This was a good example of what you should do when you see wildlife in unexpected places. Calling it in allowed the authorities to rescue the little fellow successfully. Whenever someone hears the word pangolin, if they're not familiar with the animal, they tend to hear penguin instead. Pangolins are nothing like penguins, and they are native to Taiwan. Due to habitat loss and other causes, their populations have declined significantly. They're a protected species under Taiwan's conservation laws. Pangolins are elusive and not easy to spot while hiking in Taiwan due to their nocturnal and shy nature. They'll typically just come out at night to forage for food. Hiking is an incredibly popular activity in Taiwan, but most hikers will never encounter one in the wild. Formosan sika deer, on the other hand, while also a very shy and elusive species, are probably significantly more likely to be spotted by people traveling in the mountains. The good news from this story is that the pangolin was rescued and got the attention that it needed and the support it needed to, head back home. In other news, just 2 days ago, about 630 dead fish were found along the Taoyuan River in Taiwan. The Geelong Bureau of Environmental Protection sent a team to address the situation, removing the dead fish and conducting water quality tests. The team found alarmingly low oxygen levels in the river. According to Bureau Director Ma Cheng-hao, the cleanup at this point in time is expected to already be completed. Water samples showed dissolved oxygen levels significantly below the normal range, so scientists are citing that as a potential cause. Authorities will also investigate potential wastewater pollution, violations of water pollution control regulations, including improper use of pesticides or fertilizers, illegal dumping, or unauthorized discharge of pollutants could result in very large fines. This is not the only dead fish incident, as similar stories have popped up across Taiwanese news sources several times over the past couple of years, even earlier this year. This is also something that happens from time to time in other parts of the world. Last week, I started sharing a submission from one listener who calls herself the cat slave who was attacked by Manly last week but is currently in stable condition. About her cat Manly. I sure do hope she is still in stable condition. We left off on a bit of a cliffhanger. You can go back and listen to last week's episode if you missed it, just so you have more context. It is what I personally think beautifully written. It is very narrative, so even though it's not the most spectacular, amazing, mind-blowing story in the world, the author has done what I say is a beautiful job at captivating audiences and making us really care about her cat Manly and wanting to know more. Last week, we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger. You can go back to listen to last week's episode if you missed it, but hopefully you did not. Picking up where we left off. Instead of being locked in a cage, Manly enjoyed the freedom and happiness of the wild since she was but a little kitten. When calling out her name, she would quickly make herself visible as she sprinted over. It felt like everything was so perfect. But a storm was brewing, one that I didn't know to expect being inexperienced in raising cats. It was early last February. Everyone in the camping area was busy preparing for the spring festival opening and helping tourists get checked in. One of those evenings, I was so busy that I forgot to pay attention to what Manly was up to. When it got dark, I called out like usual, but this time, Manly didn't appear. Different causes of deaths flashed before my eyes like visions. Bitten to death by stray dogs, hit by a speeding car on the highway, drowned in a pool, split in half by a wild boar trap. I remember yelling at the top of my lungs for Manny to no avail. I cried and sobbed and blamed myself for not paying more attention. The morning after this incident, my boss called me and told me that he found Manly in the parking lot, but that she looked very weak. I immediately drove from the dormitory to see her. I brought her back to the office where I realized she was covered in mud and dirt and didn't seem to respond to me. If I tried to give her a bath in the past, she would resist, biting me, but she seemed nearly lifeless with her puppet-like response. Again, I blame my lack of experience. My boss said, "Well, she'll be fine, just let her get some rest." And I believed those words, so I waited. After 2 hours, I realized nothing was going to get better, and instead it was getting worse, so I took her to the nearest vet clinic for treatment. The vet was familiar with Manly as she had treated her before. She knew how aggressive she could get when visiting the vet. The vet directly told me that her condition was very serious, and she required immediate medical attention at a larger animal hospital. I drove her an hour away to Taichung. In Taichung, the vet told me that her white blood cell index was low, her lungs were swollen, and they had filled with water. The vet even said that she might not make it through tonight because at 4.5 months old, she has limited immunity. If she goes into shock, we don't recommend proceeding. I was forced to sign the abandonment of first aid consent form. It broke my heart and made me feel like the world was collapsing in around me. I couldn't fight the bouts of tears that hit me. After Manly's third night in the ICU, she had completed chest intubation and drainage surgery. During those 3 days, I would make the 2-hour round trip to Taichung even though I could only talk to her for about 15 minutes. Maybe Manly could feel reassured hearing my voice, or maybe it was her own resilience. Like a miracle, after 5 days in the ICU and 10 days in their regular ward, she made a recovery. She survived. Despite these trials and tribulations, even when Manly was still recovering back at home, she would stay up late working with me, giving me her reminders not to stay up too late working. Now this next section is titled, "The Pet Love That Renews My Life." What? You spent 100,000 NT dollars to rescue a stray cat? When my family and friends hear how much I spent saving Manly, the amount that office workers typically make over 3 months working, they are shocked. Someone even told me, sarcastically, "There are plenty of stray cats around my house. If I had known, I'd have told you not to go through the trouble. Just come by my house and catch another one to raise for free." At the end of last year, I went through a few life changes and left my job at the camping area. Of course, naturally, I took Manly along with me as she is my family member. That's when I realized that Manly had transformed from a selfish commercial promotion idea to an irreplaceable family member. Manly will be 2 years old next month and is as naughty and charming as ever. I have never regretted spending such a large amount of money to save her. On the contrary, I'm incredibly grateful for and amazed by her effort to survive. The tacit understanding between us is incredible. This cat can actually feel my sadness and prayers. This is something that people who don't like animals or aren't willing to open their hearts to accept pets can't understand. It may be the story of an ordinary cat with an extraordinary soul. That was spoken from the listener's perspective, first person, and now that concludes her story, I can comment on it from my perspective. First and foremost, there is a reason why of all the cats I have had in my life, I think it's 7 or 8. we have never let them be outdoor cats. It does seem sad because you wish that they can enjoy the outdoors and smell different things, see different things, interact with nature, even if it's just out there rolling around in the grass and swatting their paws at some bugs. You wish that they can get the full natural experience. But also, I grew up next to a very busy street in the US, and that was kind of the biggest factor for us deciding, yeah, we don't want our cats to get out and get hit by cars mainly. But even as careful as we were over the many, many years, so careful, accidents do happen. Sometimes the door just doesn't get latched right. Cats are innately curious. They like to go outside. They're very intrigued by the outdoors. And there have been several nights when our cats haven't returned home before the end of the night. And honestly, them being out to begin with is a concern, but not being able to find them before you go to sleep is like almost, it feels like you're accepting the fate that they're not going to come back. Thankfully, at the time, we did get a lot of good advice that included, leaving food out so the cat knows to come back. And if the door isn't open when they come back because you're sleeping or you're not around, they still know to keep coming back and increasing the likelihood that you'll run into them and can let them back in, but also to put their litter box outside. Perhaps this also helps them associate their own smell with the area. So even if they're not familiar with that area because they haven't been in it, they know that their smell is there and they feel comfortable there. That's a huge thing for cats. Like when I first started fostering, one of the girls would always lay in and sleep in her litter box, even when it was kind of dirty, because it had her smell in it and it smelled safe because it was her smell. Of course, if cats like Manly don't have litter boxes, then that makes it a little bit tougher. Anyway, of all the times that our cats have gotten out overnight, actually my sisters once got out for a couple of months, we have gotten them back. One of those nights, my dad went out in the middle of the night with a flashlight because it had been, I think, 1 or 2 days and we still hadn't found our cats. And this is like my best friend, right? So I'm just going ballistic because I need my cat back. I need my best friend back. Anyway, he went out with a flashlight in the middle of the night and he happened to see a pair of bright reflective eyes in the bush, which he then found out was our cats, Leo. Searching around with a flashlight can also be helpful in situations like that. I'm not entirely clear from the story what happened to Manly while Manly was out. How did Manly get so sick so quickly? I think something anyone who has formed that bond with an animal can understand is just how willing you are to throw all of your money towards their recovery. Nothing in the world matters except protecting that little soul, because for me anyhow, you can tell just how genuine and pure that soul is. You also feel a sense of responsibility and you immediately go to all the things in your mind that you did wrong or that you could have done better to prevent the situation from happening, even if, it might not really be your fault. Of all of the animals I have gotten to know, no two have had the same personality, which is quite incredible considering they don't have clothes, speech patterns, or hobbies to give them a personality like we do as humans. The fact that we can even tell what their personalities are is pretty incredible. Anyway, happy 2nd birthday, Manly. Stay healthy, stay mischievous, stay adventurous, but try to keep your little murder mittens away from your lovely pet owner. Thank you to all of our lovely listeners who send in stories and letters. I'm always so happy to hear anybody's story about pets or animals, anything that means something to you. So please send them to me by either snail mail in the post or an email. It could be the simplest thing. It could be a story, a problem, or a little drawing. If you're sending a letter, the address can be found online. Just look for the number 55 Bay An Road address in Taipei, Taiwan. Write your emails to tristan@rti.org.tw. Making it to the end of an episode makes you a Formosa Fauna friend. It's not gross, it's cute. See you next time, friend, for Formosa Fauna Fridays here on Radio Taiwan International.